Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at some basics to email coding. I hope that this helps you wherever you are on your journey, but this is specifically aimed at complete beginners to email and the archaic structure that email coding entails. So as a prerequisite for this video, you probably want some basic HTML knowledge, at least understand how tables are built, because that's something that we'll be using a lot of. It's worth noting that the difference between email and other web development projects tends to be that email clients such as Outlook and Gmail don't always support a lot of CSS, and they don't support semantic code, so divs, and you can't use display flex and things like that. That would make our lives a lot easier as email developers. But yeah, having a responsive design in email is a little bit trickier and messier than what you would be used to in typical web development. So yeah, we're going to go straight in and have a look at the document setup, how to build something pretty basic, and then from there we're going to try and make that responsive so you can get an idea of how email code works. I really hope you find this useful. So yeah, let's get straight to it. So the first thing you want to do is create file structure is just the same as a web development project. So you've just got email test and then an images folder if you are using images. And then we're going to save, I'm using Sublime Text, which is really handy. And if you use another program, everything's kind of the same, but some of the shortcuts that I'll be going through won't be the same. So the first thing that we need to do is actually create our HTML document. So what we do is just HTML, and then every HTML document has a head and a body. These are basics that you should know before kind of coming into this, but I'll try not to touch on them too much. So yeah, HTML, here we go. This is what happens if you just do HTML and tab. So you've got the structure there. So the title would be, I usually use the subject line, something like that. And then we have the HTML, the head, the body, and the closing tag here. Now there is a few things that I put in right off the bat, and these are meta tags. So I'm just going to copy and paste these in. You'll want these in your head, and I'll go through what each one of these does. So the meta content width, device width, this is for responsive mobile. This allows us to use media queries and create a more fluid template, especially for mobile, or have breakpoints in the design which will stack columns, for example, or change the font size on mobile, all that sort of stuff. The other two are just specific to certain clients, email clients, and they're just good to keep in, as a lot of stuff that I will talk about will come in. I also do have a meta tag for the author usually. So what I would do for that is meta content, and then you put your name and the author. So yeah, one good way to do this, I have a snippet. Name, author, content equals. So yeah, this basically is the company name, or it can be your own name. It's just your stamp on the HTML document. I tend to use the client's name though. I don't tend to use my own name. So I'm just going to put email test in there. So that's our first part. The next bit is style. So a lot of you will be familiar already with CSS, but CSS, for those that don't know, is how you style an element. So if you just did, let's just quickly show something in HTML, and then we'll open this file in the email test folder. So we have, let me drag this window over so you can see it. Let me close some of these down, sorry about that. So yeah, you've got this here, and what CSS essentially does, if we go to inspect, you'll see that we have, this is CSS, these are the browser stylings, default stylings that the browser has. Now, email clients also have their own default stylings. So what you could do here is you could say font family, and you could just put sans serif to make it, you know. If I wanted a specific font that I know I've got locally, I could do something like Poppins. There you go. It's always best to have a couple of backups, so maybe I do Arial and then sans serif. So I've got my custom font, Arial and sans serif, that sort of stuff. So yeah, you can see how styling changes things. So text align center, and you'll see it's now gone into the center. Now if I refresh the page, it's gone back to normal because I've not put those in. But if I was to create a style which looks like this, H1, open your curly brackets, font family, Poppins, Arial, sans serif. You can save that, and then we can, oh, hang on, save, and then we can refresh this page, and you can see that's happened. But what happens in email is there are three ways to put CSS in typical web development. I'm talking about three ways to put CSS into action. So you can have it as an external style sheet, which is where you have main.css and then you link to that document a similar way. In the head, you do link tab, and you can see there style sheet text, and then you do css/main.css, and then all your CSS would be in one file. This is the best way to work when you're using web development. The other way is embedded styles, which are in the head like this, in a style tag within the head of the document. So you write all your styles out in the head. But email, not all email clients support that. And there is a website where you can kind of check that out. So you can look for CSS support guide for email clients. Just head over to campaignmonitor.com/CSS. I'll put the link in the description. And you can see here, so if you want style in the head, these are the clients that it supports, these are the ones that don't support it. So you can see that's got pretty good support in the head. Style in the body, few less. Link in the head, so this is to an external style sheet. You can see the support just drops off a cliff. So yeah, you've got to check everything in here. So you can do, you know, at font face, even any background image. You can see the support is sketchy. There's different ways to do backgrounds in emails. So yeah, everything is very archaic, but this document will really help you figure out what you can and can't do in email. So with the third one in mind is called inline style, and this is the one we tend to use in email the most. That is where within the H1 tag you will use an attribute style equals, and you will do font family, the same thing, Poppins, Arial and sans serif. We always use a comma to separate the values, and the only reason this is in parentheses is because of it's a custom font. This is a system font. Most computers will have this on, so you don't need to put it in parentheses. But if we delete this now, and we just have it in line, you'll see that nothing changes. We're still, you know, we're still calling on the CSS. So this is the default for most of your styling in email. And then you'll use classes to change things on mobile. What I mean by that, maybe we have a class that is class equals mcenter. And then for mobile, if you're not familiar with media queries, all they are is these go in the head. So at media only screen and max width 609 pixels. What's that say? What that is saying is at this width of screen, apply these styles to whatever has those classes. So for example, if we do mcenter and then we say text align center, we also want to put important because this basically supersedes every other style. So inline style, there's something called CSS specificity. I can't even say the word. Specificity. Don't know. But yeah, CSS, have a look at that. And then all you have to do is different things obviously trump other stuff. So inline overrides an embedded style, embedded meaning in the head. So if I had up here, for example, H1, and then I had font family times a serif font, and saved that, it would still come out as Poppins, because what's happening here is the inline style is overwriting that one, and that's what I mean by specificity. I don't know. I'm gonna have to work on that word before I start saying it more. But yeah, so yeah, that's what it essentially means, cascading style sheets, CSS. So with that in mind, this important basically means doesn't matter. This rule takes precedent over all the other rules. So yeah, if we have M center, text align center, but we have, say, for example, to separate CSS values, use a semicolon, and then you could do text align left. So this should go to the center when we get to a certain screen size. There you go. So that's all we do. That's the fundamental principle of how we rearrange stuff on mobile, is to have these classes. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to go through every single style that I have, but I've got a style sheet that you can grab and link in the description if you want this style sheet. I've basically just pasted an entire style sheet, and I'll go through what is in here. So there are comments in here. So there are some fixes for certain email clients in here, which are good to keep in. Message view body. This is for Samsung, because otherwise it cuts off a little bit. This is for Gmail. Some of the links. This is again for Samsung Mail. SFR, you can delete this if that's not a client that you're interested in. SFR as well. This makes sure things are in the middle, centered. In SFR, the whole email can be to the left, but again, this isn't a fix that I keep in that often. This is only if I'm using clients that have international and multiple multilingual emails, where they're going to be sending to clients like SFR. If you're an English speaking sort of company, or you're developing emails for an English speaking company, I'd keep that out. So we're just going to keep that out for now. Android 4.4 margin, again, not a huge one. If you want to support that far back, great. If not, don't keep it in. This is for Apple, for links, Outlook links. So this is, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, every client has default styling. This is all to replace that default styling. So you don't have to write this every time. This is just something that I paste into every single email that I make. So every email that I make will have all of these styles up until we get to the media query. So as I've talked about, the media query is for mobile. So all these classes now only apply on mobile. So there's a Gmail one here, which is specific fix for Gmail where it's not 100% width. So it adds a class, it adds an element U. And that's how we can target the Gmail app, is because it wraps the whole email in this element U. So then we can say, okay, within U, the element U, what that means is basically within here, there would be an element U. This is how Gmail handles the code. The code that it actually outputs would look something like this. And so then it will only, that style will only apply on Gmail. So the only thing we need to do is add the class equals body. That's something else to make that work. And then let's look through some of these mobile classes that I use in every single email, just so that they're useful to have. Text align left, right, and center. So all of those are great. Changing the font sizes, so I have like a grid system type thing with the span. So if you want an element to span 100%, 90%, 80%, it's all quite intuitive, or at least I think it is. I've been using this sort of template for the better part of 8 years. So it's bulletproof in a sense that it will work pretty much everywhere and is tested everywhere. And then we have spaces, because I'll show you how we make spaces shortly, but yeah, all the spaces are in here. M height 5, 10, 15, 20, all the way up. And you can add new ones. Say you had a very specific, where a specific space that was 100 pixels and it was way too big on mobile and you just wanted it to be 80. You would just simply copy the whole thing. I'm pressing Command and D to get all those values. And then change it to 80, and then you'd use that class in an element. You'd just say class equals this if you wanted it to do that on mobile. So I hope that's making sense. I won't go through all of these. I'll go through the main ones, which are center. I use a lot to center content on mobile, or text. It's specifically for text. block is another one, which is for stacking. We'll get onto that in a moment, but if you've got 2 columns, you'd add block onto both of those columns on mobile, and then on mobile they become display block, which puts them on their own row, and width 100%. So yeah, you'll see that in action, and hopefully that'll make more sense. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense now. block padding is when you want it to stack, but you do want a little bit of space either side. You don't want it flush to the edges. And then padding is the same sort of thing, but it doesn't stack anything. It's just if you want padding on mobile either side. And then the other 2 that I really use a lot are hide and show. So these are the elements where I want to show or hide something on mobile. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and I'll probably do a separate video on how to do that, because it's a beast within itself, a bit like background images and email. So yeah, I hope this kind of gives you a good footing to start coding something. So let's very quickly build something. I have snippets that you can purchase for $20 on my website, link in the description. I'll be using those snippets, but it speeds up my workflow, and I spent a lot of time creating these snippets. So if you do want them, there is instructions of how to install them, and you can purchase them on my website. Basically, table 610 is a snippet that I use, and there are hundreds of these snippets which speed up your workflow. But let's just talk through what's actually going on here so you can write this yourself. But yeah, I've not written an email like this for many years. It just takes too long. So this table here, we've got table, it has a class. Well, before we go into that, let's talk about what tables are in case you don't know. So tables they're a bit like an Excel sheet. If you can imagine, an Excel sheet has tables and cells and rows. So you've got your table, which is the outermost thing. Then you've got a T body, which is just the table body. You can have a table head, but we very rarely use that in email. The main bit of a table that we will use is table row and table cell. So in a table like this, we have the table body, table row, and table cell. And the great thing about tables is you can stack them within each other. So I can put another table within here, 100% width table. This is another one of my snippets. So 100% width table can go in there, and you can see you can put another one in here. And this is how we achieve layouts. We create. Let me show you a visual representation. Let me just open SketchUp to give you guys a quick. I have a custom email template here, just a sheet. So if we do a box that's 610 pixels, which is the size that I tend to do all my clients' emails unless they specify another width. So basically, if I wanted a layout that was something like, I know the spacing's based on previous stuff. I usually use 16 between stuff, and then I know it's 297 if I want a 2-column layout. The widths are up here if you want to copy them. But yeah, say I wanted this layout, but then on this one here, I actually wanted maybe this sort of approach. Let's just do something like that. There we go. So how this would be coded in email would be, this would be a table. Then you'd have a spacer, which we'll get onto. This would be an entire table. So you'd have an entire table over here. That would have 3 columns. One, then it would have a column in the middle here, and then it would have a column here. Within this last column, you would have another table. And then within that table, you'd have 3 rows. 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. So I hope that makes sense. Like, that's how all emails are built. We kind of work our way in with tables. It's very code heavy, but this is how I found things to work best for a variety of reasons, but mainly rendering. There are advances where people are using divs in certain emails, and that's I have tested some of that, and you can clean up your code quite a bit, especially if you're not too picky about certain clients. But when you're working with a big client, I've been working with Burger King, for example, or other clients that have multilingual, like millions of sends in a campaign, for example. You really need to make sure that it's working in everything, because even if it's 1% of your opens, that could be 200,000 people for certain clients. So it has to work everywhere. So the reason that I'm still on this archaic code is purely for that. But there are, I'll link them in the description. There are advances for if you're 90% of your audience is on iPhone, for example, you can probably do a lot more. You can use a lot more efficient code, I would imagine. But yeah, this is my own experiences, and it works everywhere. So yeah, I am just kind of teaching you what works for me. So let's go back to this. Let's try and recreate that I just made in Sketch. So there is another snippet, which is table 610 with a BG. So this is where we're going to use a background color. So let's grab the background color from in here and use that. So there we go. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to do some text, and we're going to do some spacing. So if we wanted, for example, let's just do, this block in the middle here, and we'll probably do it like 50 pixels or something. Yeah, just center that. So we want to do this, but we don't ever want it to run into the edges. So we're going to do some padding, top, bottom, left and right. How I achieve that is it's another snippet called TR Spacer at the top, the first one. So this brings in some spacing. This is just going to create vertical space. This is super easy for me because I just tab through. 24 pixels high, and then the col span is how many columns are in this table. When you create a new table, it's new col span. You don't have to keep that all the way through the chain. You'll see what I mean hopefully shortly. But yeah, col span, it sounds exactly what it means. It's just how many columns do you want this row to span, and I know that the next row down is going to be spacing on the left, spacing on the right, and then our content in the middle. So that's 3 columns. So I'm going to do col span 3, and then I'm just going to take that whole thing and paste that underneath this middle one. And then here, I'm holding command there on Mac to get the cursor to do 2 things at once. And then I have another snippet called TD Spacer, 24 pixels again. So that will create 24 pixels down the left and right, which makes sure that the text will never run into the sides. So yeah, we've basically created a little box now. If I save this and go into our browser and refresh, you'll see we've got this little box. Now, if we look in here, you can see we've got a spacer at the top and a spacer at the bottom. It's probably going to be easier if I just put a single letter in there, just so that we can see exactly what's going on. So we've got a spacer at the top, a spacer at the bottom, and then this one we have a spacer there, so the content will never run out of there. Then we've got this is where our content's going to go, our main content, and then we've got our final spacer over on the right. So I hope that makes sense. Now, to talk about what these snippets are, for those that don't want to purchase the snippets, we'll talk about, you would just write this every time or save your own snippets. Height equals 24. But then we also need to register in a few ways for different email clients. Again, it's repetitive, but this is what I've found to work the best. So height, opening a style tag and just having height equals 24, line height equals 24, font size equals 24, whatever email client registers in that for this cell is going to pick, one of these is going to work for it, and then there's a non-breaking space in it. You can't just do a space like that. That will probably just get omitted as it cleans up the white space. Having at NBSP semicolon is just a non-breaking space. The space will be retained even during the cleanup process of trying to eliminate white space before sending. The same applies here. So we've got our row, and then our cell is the thing that we apply our style into, and that you'll see that coming up a lot. So yeah, that's that, and then TD, and then TD here. same sort of thing, spacing. So what we're going to do, we're going to get rid of this and we're going to use TD style, but I'll talk through this. This is just because it'll take ages to write this out and I never write it out anymore, but I'll talk through what if you were to write it out. So we've got align center. You can left and right align stuff, but I tend to very rarely use that alignment one. But we have, after that, we've just got the style tag, and this is where we apply all the styling of the text we want. So we've got open sans as the default here, Arial, sans serif, text decoration none, so nobody adds underlines or things like that. And then font size, let's just go with 42. And then I can tab through my snippets. They're built in a way that allows me just to tab through. Color, let's just make it black. Font weight, let's make it bold. Text align center. And then tab again, and then here we are. We've got a font face. This is purely for Outlook. I'm not even sure that you need this all the time, but we support up to, I think it's Outlook 2003 on some clients, so I leave this in for those. And yeah, we just put hi there in there, save that, and then if we go back to here, we will have our main block. Now, if we wanted more space into the top and the bottom, and that just looked a little bit odd, all we do is we go in here and maybe we want 60 at the top and 60 at the bottom, save that, and then refresh, and you can see we've got that now. Now we want a spacer of 16 pixels, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go to the end of this table, and we're going to do the same again, table 610, only this time we're going to do BG, and we're going to make that white, and all we're going to do is a spacer in this one, so CR spacer, 16 pixels, col span 1 because there's no other columns going on in here. You won't see that if I refresh the page just because it's invisible, the background's white. And then we're going to do our 2-column layout. So this is where things are going to get a little bit interesting. And we're going to do some mobile setup. So yeah, table 610, BG, make the background white because we want the spaces in between to be white. What I mean by that is these bits need to be white, so we don't want to make the whole background this color. That wouldn't work, but we're going to do 3 things, and we're going to just have sort of A, B, and C, just in each of those. Now what I'm showing you is very basic. Like, you could, if you wanted, replace this with an image tag and have a 610 pixel wide image as the hero and just link it. I'll show you how to link stuff right at the end. We'll maybe switch that out for an image right at the end. So here we need to figure out what to do. So we've got 2 columns of 297 each. So the first thing we need to do is create 3 columns because we have a spacer and a 3rd column. So this one's the easy one. So width equals 16 because we have 16 pixels there, and we'll do style width 16. This is again the duplicate for different email clients, so it makes sense. So yeah, we've got the 3 there. And then these 2 are the ones that are going to stack on mobile, essentially. Now, one thing to note for stacking is they have to be THs. This just is, again, like is to fix, it's not needed everywhere, but there are some clients where they won't stack if they're not TH instead of TD. That's just changing it from table cell to table head. But yeah, it's a very small change. It's not, you know, just try and keep that in mind. And then we're going to add the class mblock. And one thing I like to do as well is add there's something called margin bottom. If I don't add this in, they're gonna, when they stack, they're gonna be flush on top of each other, and I want a little bit of spacing. So if I go to .margin bottom, you'll see here, I'm just gonna change that to 16 so that it's consistent. So yeah, if I now do A and B in here, you will see, hopefully, we got 2 columns here, A and B. And then when we go to mobile, 1 second, there's one thing that we've missed out. So you can see there they've not stacked. The middle cell has to be hidden on mobile. So you just add and hide. And this would be the same if it was, even if this was 5 columns, you know, if this was, you wanted a row of 3, you'd still need to hide that middle one. So let me just show you what that would look like. A, B, C. There you go, A, B, C, and you can see the margin bottom needs to be on that one as well. Refresh that. So you can see on mobile, we've got 3 side by side. On desktop, 3 by side, and then on mobile they stack. So that's what this end margin bottom does. So with that in mind, let's just go back because we don't need all of those, but same principle. I hope that makes sense. Get rid of these A's and B's, and this is our first example of a nested table that we were talking about. So how do we do a nested table? We just simply do table 100 in there. So this is now a table within a cell. The other thing that we've left off these is the width equals 297. We don't put pixels in the attribute. What I mean by that is attribute is where we've got something equals and then something in parentheses like width equals, not parentheses, quotations. What am I on about? Parentheses are the curly ones, aren't they? I'm sure I said that earlier. I'm just not thinking. Style equals width 297, and this is where we do use pixels. So I know there's a lot of confusing things in email, but once you get coding for it, it's quite a niche, and you can make a good living off being a good email developer. Yeah, there's lots of stuff, like it's quite a interesting role, having done it for quite a while. So yeah, you've got a table within there. Now what we want to do is we want to do the same sort of thing as up here. So I'm actually going to just copy all of that because I kind of want the same structure. I want a top, a bottom, a left and a right to sort of mirror my content. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it a bit smaller though. I don't need it to be that big. So I'm going to do 32 and I'm just going to change that to A. And again, like you can tweak the sizing and things like that, but there is a lot of copy and pasting involved for sure. And then we're going to put that into this one as well, into the other cell, and just change that to B. Now what you'll see is it most likely will just look like that. Now we want background color, don't we? We want to see the blocks as such. So what we need to do is go and grab that background color that we used earlier, and where to apply it will depend on what you want it to look like. Now if you want 2 cells to be the same background color regardless of content, you want them to sort of match the height. So if one content's really long and the other's a bit shorter, you don't want one short and one long background color. You want them both to be the same height, but if you want them to be both the same height, you'll apply it to the cell. So what I mean by that is where we've got this width 297, let's just go ahead and put background color and then that in, and also the attribute BG color for what client is that? There's an email client, Lotus Notes. I mean, if you're not going to support that far back, don't do it. But yeah, that's what it's for. So we refresh this, and you'll see no matter what the content length is. So if I do a line break here and do C, they both grow. Now the difference is if I take it out of here, so if I just undo everything that I just did and I put it on the table instead, you'll see how this makes a difference. So background color, refresh, and then just add that just to show you because the content is the same right now. Refresh, you can see that they don't take up the same amount of space. If you want it the same, do it on the cell. If you want them to be independent, do it on the table within the cell. So yeah, and the other thing that you can do if you is v-align on the actual cell. You can use something called v-align, and this is exactly what it sounds like, a vertical alignment. And this is a HTML attribute. It doesn't always work in CSS, but you can do top, which looks like this. You can do bottom, which I'm guessing you will know what that looks like. And then the default, if you don't call anything, is how it was in the middle. But I always tend to do top. There's very few use cases where I use bottom. So top, refresh, there we go. So yeah, we don't, in this case, we actually don't want, what we want is this one to grow. We want this background to grow depending on the whatever's in these two blocks. So if this block was an image and it was a bit higher, we'd want this to grow so that the layout retains some, visually. So what I'll do is I'd actually, in that case, I would actually make this one, BG color, I would actually make this one like that. So in this instance, we should get, let's take it out of here. Let's take it out of the table, but leave it in the cell. And then what we're going to do here is this is where it gets interesting. In this cell here, we want 3 rows within it. So how I would do that is I'd paste this underneath and I'd change this to a C. And then I'd do another table, 100% width table. So we've got align center, width, border, cell spacing and padding. These are things that we used to stop email clients adding all sorts of stuff. So they're on every table. And then, yeah, we're just going to do the spacer. So we want our height to be 16, height to be 16, line height, font size, and MSO line height rule exactly is just for Outlook. So now if we refresh, you can see we've got this amazing pattern. We've got A, B, C. And if we inspect what's going on here, so that you can see what we've just written, we've got our main table, and then we've got our first row, and then we've got a cell, a spacer, and a cell. Now this cell has the background color attached to the cell so that it grows with this content. No matter what this content is, no matter how long this column's content is, this column's background color will grow. And then we've got a space that hides on mobile, and then on desktop, on the next cell is just what it is, and then we have 3 tables, 100% width tables stacked on top of each other. Now, if they're not 100% width, they'll just align left, they'll be on the same row. So 100% width table, and then 100% width table with just spacing of 16 pixels in, and then 100% width table, these two having the background colors, and then within there having a top spacer, a left spacer, a right spacer. So I hope that makes sense. Everything's like you're working your way in all the time. And then on mobile, these should stack. There you go. So hi there, A, B, C. And then when we look on mobile, we can see that our spacing, we don't want to hide this one because it's a row. And everything's, you can see M margin bottom has been applied. Without that M margin bottom, they would be flush like that. So there you have it. There's a really basic design. And then finally all I'll do, just let me grab an asset. Just a 610 pixel. So copy image address. Let's just use this image just for the sake of it, for this email test. Now say I wanted an image up here. What I would do is I'd just get rid of all of this and I'd just do a new cell and I'd add a line center. And then I would do image source equals, paste the image source in, / close. And then I would add the class equals mspan10. So that's going to make it 100% width on mobile. But then I'm going to use width equals 610 and then style equals width 610 pixels. And I'm also going to just do border 0. And display block. Again, these are just things I do to every image, or most of them. And now if we refresh, we've got this, but it looks a little bit odd, I'm sure you'll agree. So what we'll do is we will get rid of this spacing. We'll get rid of the bottom spacing. We'll also get rid of this spacing and this spacing. So we just have the one table with the image in. That should make it a little bit cleaner, but you can still see we've got some odd background color. So all we do in that case is we just remove the background colors. There you go, and there you go. Save that, and let's have a look at that. And then if we go down, you can see that it grows. On mobile, it's changing from 610 to 100% width, and that's that. That's like the basics of all email code, and I'm hoping that actually sets you off to understand how things work on desktop and mobile for email, and this has worked flawlessly for me for many years, this method. And like I say, if you do want to speed up your workflow, those snippets, $20, super easy to purchase over at my website, link in the description. And if you've got any questions at all, just let me know. There are also templates for sale and things like that if you want to use those to try and take little bits and build a modular library, anything like that. That's kind of how I work. And your output increases dramatically. But if you're in the stages of sort of learning and picking this up for the first time, it's just useful to have examples and sort of, I don't know about you, but I learn from being immersed in it as opposed to reading it in a book or anything like that. I have to be, truly in it. So yeah, with that in mind, thanks for watching the video, and if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments, and subscribe and like if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time, where we'll be looking at background images in email, and we'll also take a look at some of the unusual things that can happen in email in terms of rendering, some of the things to watch out for. So yeah, stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Bye.